Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a writing coach, a manuscript editor, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with Melissa Collings. She's written a debut romance novel, but it's not just romance; it's sort of women's fiction as well. So, Melissa, welcome, and let's talk
Thank
about
you.
let's
I'm
talk
so
about your
excited to be here. I just have to say that first. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And we are talking also about False Flat, which
Ooh,
is your first novel, which is it's
yes.
very exciting
Thank you.
because I know this has been a long journey for you.
It
And
has been.
the false flat is actually a metaphor. And you you explain it, and I can talk about it a little bit
Yes.
myself.
Well, this title seemed perfect because it is a metaphor for, well, it's actually a cycling term. It's a metaphor for my character's life, but it's a cycling term. So when the road ahead, when you're about to get on a bicycle, it looks flat and easy to ride, but in reality, once you start riding, your legs are worn out and it's not really false. There's a subtle incline and it wears you out. So this is that metaphor for my character's life because she starts out thinking that she's got everything going on, everything falls apart, it's a false flat, and then it happens to her multiple times throughout the novel.
And I was not familiar with the term, and what
Yes.
and I go for a walk every day around the neighborhood I live in Baltimore,
Yeah.
and when I'm walking, um, there's about halfway through, I'm winded and I'm going, well, what's going on here?
That's
And
a
and
false flat.
that's exactly it. And as I was reading the book, I realized on the way back, it's slightly downhill. I'm
Yes.
making a circle and I'm coming back and it's like, oh, the
Yes.
hardest part is over, and then I'm able
Yes.
to,
You're going right
zip
down.
into it.
And I that is something that they went back and forth. The publisher went back and forth on whether we were gonna keep that title or not. And because that was my original title, the one that I brought to them, and usually they change it. And so the more they thought about it and the more they realized how I'd used it, the more they wanted to keep it. But this is actually from my father-in-law. He is a cyclist, he bicycles, and the false flat, he we were talking about something and then he brought up the term the false flat, and I'd never heard of it either. And I
Mhm.
thought, "This is perfect." I just started squealing as we were talking, and I thought, "This is it. This is the title." And so I was really excited that they kept it.
Did you have to argue with them about
No,
nothing like that because
nothing
they
like
got
that.
it as well?
They did, but even when they told me they were gonna change it, I was so excited to be published
Yeah,
that I
exactly.
was like, "Whatever. You can
Right.
you can rename it. I'll do anything. We'll do
Right.
anything." So I was ready to let it go. I mean, to me, I had lived with a false flat for a long time, so that was special to me, but in the work, as you know, so it was gonna be there whether it was the title or not.
Talk about the story, and your protagonist.
Yes, okay, so she is a 32-year-old financial planner,
This is
and
Penelope, right?
Penelope Auberge. And it she as I said, she cycles to control her anxiety, which she has in spades. She's got an anxiety issue. In the beginning of the novel, everything is kind of crashing down on her. Her mom is micromanaging her life. Her boss is giving her clients to the males within the finance company because he doesn't think that women can handle money. And then as she's fuming about this, she looks out the window and she sees her fancy lawyer boyfriend kissing another woman. Turns out he's married. And so she just throws her hands up, swears off love, swears off relationships, and makes a drastic move from Minnesota to Nashville and starts focusing on her financial business. One of the first things that happens when she gets to Nashville is she meets this perky woman named Deanna, and they're fighting over the last box of Cap'n Crunch. And she becomes friends with this woman, and this woman, Deanna, has a brother named Grant, a mustache cyclist who Penelope just denies any feelings for. But of course, I won't spoil it on whether or not whatever happens. But then it kind of comes back around to that title, The False Flat. She thinks her life is kind of ironing out and something unexpected happens and you have to read to find out.
And I think that's why it's not a typical romance. I mean,
Yes.
it's not, it is a romance, but
Yes.
it's not as well. And
It's not.
what's the difference? What's the difference between a romance and women's fiction?
That's a great question. So my publisher is a romance publisher. They publish romance and they felt like it belonged in the romance category. And I agree. But it is also just equally to me what's women's fiction. So romance, there are genre expectations. You have to have a happily ever after. The two main characters have to end up together. And then there are certain other things that a romance has to have. Mine has a satisfying ever after, but it is not your typical. And this is it's emotional. So there are rom-com elements, romantic comedy elements to it,
Yep.
especially in the beginning. But then there are you laugh, but then you cry. Most people do. Most people cry. Did you cry?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, let me couch that. I mean, there was a little mist there. I mean,
Oh,
look,
I love it.
you handle emotion really well,
Thank you.
and quite luxuriously, I think, because
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
because there's a lot of emotional nuance in the way you write, and just a lot of character nuance as well. So in fact, this is a great opportunity to read a couple of little tinsy excerpts to give
Ooh,
people a sense of how you write.
I cannot wait to see what you picked. This is a
Okay.
treat for me.
Okay, well, the first is near the beginning, and you write, family. A part of me wanted to keep watching, wanted to run because my mind kept circling like a vulture hungry for decaying memories.
Yes.
Also, this was good too, and this is what I mean by the way you effectively handle emotion and psychology. Hell, as it was this evening, had taught me a quick lesson. I had a past. My past had shaped me into an immovable form, and that form didn't belong with these people. Despite what Deanna had said, it would only be a matter of time before they cracked me open and uncovered the scrambled eggs inside. And there's one more, and this is in the epilogue, and I'm not going to give any plot stuff away, but there's this line that I think is very profound. Life isn't about having the right ingredients. It's about figuring out what to make when you're missing some.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
I do not remember, but I remember earlier in the book, somebody, and I think it was Penelope, because there's a lot of food in this book. There's a lot of, I like writing about food. But somebody describes life as a cake and having all the right ingredients, and that you have to have the right ingredients for a cake. And so when I got to the end, it's something, I don't know where this came from. I don't know if I subconsciously picked it up somewhere, but it was one of those moments where I just kind of had chills and I thought this is the perfect way to circle back. And it's not about having the right ingredients. You don't always get the right ingredients, but you have to make do with what you get.
Right.
And that can be a beautiful thing.
Well, and I mean that's the way my wife Cindy, just the other night she knows how to make a great meal out of whatever happens to be around.
I love that. That's a
Yeah,
talent.
it is. It really is. There's a certain creativity there, but there's also a certain improvisation to it, which
Yes.
is like living life.
Yes, it is. It is. What meal did she make, may I ask? As I like to talk
Well,
about
it was a
food.
little of this and a little of that, and it was very good.
I love it.
Yeah.
You don't know what to call it. It's a
I would
surprise dish.
she wouldn't know what to call it either,
That's
In fact
fantastic. Those are the
she
best
kinda
kinds of meals.
she kinda lowballed it. She said, "Well, it is what it is." And it was great. And
I
so,
love that.
she has very high standards for herself. And so,
Yes.
but this is not I'm trying to
I can relate.
I'm trying to interview her. Uh, uh,
Oh, yes.
she would be a fun interview. But
Oh, I would so watch that. I would love to see that.
well, and of course, you've read an early draft of my memoir, so
Yes,
you know the big picture,
I
and
do.
yeah, and she comes across in that a lot better than I do.
You both come across as real people. Your memoir is fantastic. I
Well,
loved
thank
reading
you,
that.
but this is not about me. This is about you,
Okay,
Melissa.
okay.
Okay. So I want to talk about the process and the road to publication because,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I mean, for me, it was a long time ago, 20 years ago at least. What was the process like in terms of your writing technique, the feedback that you got, how that made things better or worse, and the road to publication? It's sort of a stew of questions,
Yeah.
which is bad interviewing technique. I should do it one at a time and then zero in. But I'm giving you an essay question, but I'm sure
Yes.
I'll have follow-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a great question, but it's also a very I could talk probably for an hour on this alone. I
Which means you should probably teach a class somewhere.
Oh, I love sharing about it. Not everybody realizes how hard it is to write a novel, but you there it's so long. I mean, from idea conception to writing it on the page to getting the feedback to finding whatever path you're going to take to publishing.
We'll stop
Everything
right
is
there.
long.
How
Yes.
long did it take from idea to the finished first draft?
Oh, that is a hard question because I wrote another novel in between. So this is actually my third novel that I've written, the
Okay.
first to get published.
And
That
you probably did it in fits and starts and returned to it and
I did. So
okay.
yes, and I got it. So it took me, I don't know if I had to boil it down, maybe a year of kind of going through the whole process. And in
But
between I
in
was doing other
actuality, because of the other intervening things, how long did it take?
several years.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, it was several.
And was there ho- there must have come a point where you decided this is what I'm going to focus on.
Yes. And so I'll back up and you kind of direct this of how we need to go here because
All right.
I'll run off the rails. But
Okay.
I am a medical provider. So I did not I'm not a writer. Well, I am a writer now, okay, but I wasn't. And when we've had our first baby, I decided to stay home and I
You
realized
meaning you and your husband, not you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Just clarifying, Cindy.
Hilarious. Okay. Yes, when my husband and I had our first child, I decided to stay home, and I'm not a very good stay-at-home mom. I'll just be I needed my own thing, and I realized that pretty quickly because I'd worked for years and years, and coming from the operating room where I was in spine surgery and working 50, 60-hour weeks, I just had a hard time adjusting to being at home, and so I picked up a novel that I'd written before I started college. And I started writing it and I realized, wow, I really love to write. And so that was the beginning of my journey. I wrote kind of in secret and then I gave my book to my husband and I said, I, I wrote this. He knew I was writing because I was spending time on it, but I don't know if it's any good. Like I am not a
Why
writer.
were you writing in secret?
I didn't want anybody to know that I was doing this because I didn't,
Why
if it
not?
wasn't good,
Mhm.
I didn't want them to see it and say, "Oh, well, you can't do it," because I like to be good at
'Cause
what
if
I
they
do.
'cause if they knew, they'd say, "Well, show me."
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They would wanna see it, and then I would have to show them, and that's really alarming,
So in a
especially
sense,
when
Stephen was your first beta reader?
absolutely, my
And
first
how
beta
did
reader.
that's dangerous
Very.
because the spouse can just wreck the whole experience, they can ruin it.
Yes, they can, and I told him, I said, "I want you to be honest. I mean, brutally honest. I just need to know whether I can write or not." And I guess I meant that when I said it, but I didn't really realize. that he was brutally honest with me. And so he ripped the book to shreds.
Oh my goodness.
And at one point, he was like, I would have thrown this at the wall. And I was devastated.
Oh dear.
I was devastated. But here is the thing. And I don't know if he's listening to this, it'll be funny. But he said, but you have something. You have something here and you just need to fix it. Do you know that was the biggest gift to me? That was a huge gift because I trusted him. He was the only person that I trusted with my words at that time.
Mhm.
And he was real. That honesty is so important to me. And I think he was probably a little more honest than he needed to be, truth be told.
Sure.
But he did have faith in me. And he said, just fix it. And I did. And I worked on it. And he gave me the room and the space to work on it. And he gave me more than anything that encouragement to continue to pursue. And that was huge.
That is huge.
Yeah.
And how did you go about getting better?
I just kept writing. And finally, I went to a writing group. They were meeting at a Panera in Nashville. That's where I'm located. And I went and I took my pages that I had edited a lot based on Steven's feedback, which he's a really good editor. More line editor than big picture, but he did a great job. I took my little 5 pages and I laid it on the table and everybody read it. And I was so nervous and I got great feedback. Not all of it was positive, but it helped shape me. And so then I thought, okay, I took that and I kept writing and I kept writing and I kept getting feedback. And then that shaped this story. Well, shaped multiple stories that I put in feedback. And then there were times where the feedback was amazing. There were times when it was fantastic. There were other times where the feedback really held me back. I trusted people with my words. They gave me advice, and then people would give me conflicting advice.
Conflicting advice. Yeah.
Isn't that the worst?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it gives you some choices.
That's true. That's true. Then you get to decide. I guess
Right? Well, you always get to decide.
yes, that is very true. But at that time, I didn't realize that, and I was new and fragile, and I had to take a step back for a little bit because it just got in my head. And I realized that people were giving me, I didn't know where to go. This person was saying this person was saying that. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just not good.
Well, how do you assess the quality of the feedback you're getting? How did you?
Back then, I just took everything and I tried to take it all in. And that was impossible. It took me some time to realize that I actually have to evaluate this feedback. I have to learn how to hear what people mean instead of what they say. Because sometimes what they say is not what they mean.
Can you give me an example?
Oh, if they say they did that, well, something didn't resonate with them. And it wasn't because of what I had on the page. It's really hard for me to give you an example that's concrete. But then I would say, oh, they didn't have a problem with this scene. They had a problem with my character. And she wasn't showing emotion here or something like that.
Right.
And I began to realize, okay, some of this feedback is great. I take it in. Then other times I'm like, you don't understand my story. And then it's like, okay, you're not my reader. And
Right.
I appreciate the time and effort, everything that they everything that they did for me. But I had
It's a learning process. And I've
Yes.
heard this about writing groups, that they can be excellent, but
Yes,
they can also be the blind leading the blind.
absolutely. I am at this point now where I feel really comfortable assessing that, where if somebody reads it, I can say, okay, I can understand and take their feedback and use it appropriately. But that's huge, especially when you're new.
Well, and I mean, writing is so personal because
It
I would
is.
imagine, I mean, I know you and I've had several good conversations, and I would imagine that Penelope, there's some of you in Penelope, right?
Absolutely. I gave her all my hair struggles.
I was
Yes.
thinking more psychology though.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There is some, absolutely. I am not Penelope, but I don't think I could have written Penelope effectively if I didn't put some of myself in there to really understand. Some of it comes from just the people that I've been around, you know, watching other people. In medicine, I've come across a lot of different people and with anxiety and all that. I don't have anxiety like Penelope does,
I
but I
didn't think
can
so, yeah.
relate, you know?
Yeah, okay. That shows that really write what you know encompasses life that you know.
It does. And I love putting those nuggets in there. I mean, don't you do that? Those little nuggets
Oh,
of
absolutely.
yeah, that experience because it makes it real, and some of the scenes that are from my own life that I just put on the page, a lot of times people will say, "That just I just felt like I was there." I was like, "Well, you were."
You're right. Well, and a lot of times I notice that it's more likely to happen when I'm actually writing the draft. You know,
Yes.
it's like you're much more it just seems to me I'm more attuned to what's going on around me, and it
Yes.
ends up dropping in, and you're not really I don't find myself, maybe you're different than I am, but, I don't take notes and, so, "Oh, this would be good in a book."
Yeah, I don't
If
either.
Yeah, if it's gonna be good, it's gonna stay in you,
You're right. I
and it'll
agree.
just come out at the right time.
I love that. Yes, come out at the right time. It's
Um,
percolating in there.
it really is. Your unconscious and your subconscious are very important tools in the writer's, tool bag. Um,
Yes.
Talk about planning versus seat of the pantsing. A lot of writers hate that question, but
Oh,
it's an
yeah.
important question about process.
Yes, it is. And I'm of 2 minds on this one. I started out completely pantsing everything. So that was spur of the moment, just I did not know what I was gonna write. It just I didn't know what was gonna happen. It just flew onto the page however it was gonna go. I realized though, when you do that, you have to be okay with going back and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting because it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work out when you do it that way. When you fly
Because
by the
you don't know what the story is.
exactly. So it can be this jumbled mess, and then you have to go back and you have to finesse it, and you have to, create this beautiful statue from the rock that you've put down there. But when you are plotting, you know what's going to happen in the story. I feel like there's really not a loss of creative freedom when you do it that way, when you have a loose outline. So I think doing it now, a loose outline of where I'm going to go is beneficial for me. And then I can have that if the story takes a turn, I'm okay with that and I'll let it go. I'm not going to keep it in the box.
How many drafts did False Flat go through?
Multiple drafts,
Really?
multiple drafts. And Penelope did not start out as a biracial character.
Why not?
So because oh, that's a loaded question.
No, it's
I
not.
spoilers, I'm biracial. um I was I wrote her as a white woman, and then I put a biracial character inside, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be my thing. I'm gonna have a biracial person in all of my books, it's gonna be fabulous." And then a biracial person read it, beta read my book, and she said, "Melissa, if you're so excited about this biracial person," which was William. William is a character, a side character in this book. He's still biracial. But she said, "Why don't you write the main character biracial?" And I just looked at her. We were on Zoom, and I just looked at her and I was like, "That is a fantastic question." Well, I knew the answer to the question. I had spent most of my life trying to convince everybody I wasn't biracial. Well, not really trying to convince, but trying to downplay the fact that I was biracial. Uh, and so I knew that to write that story was going to put me in a vulnerable place, more vulnerable than I'd been. And I put a lot of vulnerability on there, but
You
that
did,
was,
yeah.
yeah. But that is probably where in my whole life, that is where I am most vulnerable. That is been tough for me. But I tell you, John, doing that not only made this story completely changed it where people really didn't understand my character at first. They liked the story. They were like, "But I can't really connect with your character." That changed because that made it made me I was able to put on the page what is different about me. What makes my story unique, what makes my story different, and what I can relate to, so it was so much more genuine, and I found that I can it helped me be okay with saying, "Yes, I am biracial." So this book helped me say that.
There's so many things I wanna ask. One thing I wanna
Yeah.
note, however, though, is that, as I read it, I was aware of the biracial character, but it was not in your face. It's not really a book about race per se, right?
No, it's not. It's not.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, but that then opens, and forgive me, 'cause you know me and you know how, I can go deep here,
I love going deep, you know I do. That's
but
why I said you're brave to go live with me because
well, it takes 2 here. But help me understand what it was about you that made you reluctant. I can't remember the exact word you used, but I mean, you were uncomfortable. You were trying to, in a sense, hide the fact that you're biracial.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
When you grow up and I put this in the book. When you grow up biracial, my mom is white. I lived with only my mom. And so and when I went to school, I felt really between 2 groups. I wasn't black enough to be with the black girls. I wasn't really white enough to be with the white girls, though the white girls were my friend group because I was bullied by the black girls. And so that was really rough for me. That
Did
was
you
very
did you
rough.
know your dad?
No, no, I didn't know my dad. I had met him,
Mhm.
but I did not know him. No,
So you really, for all practical purposes, grew up in white society.
absolutely. Yes, I did.
And so school was the melting pot that isn't
It
always
was.
melting.
Yes. And so that was really tough for me. My hair was talked about, and that's what I gave Penelope. There's a scene in the book where that scene that is in the book with her, I didn't know whether to put that in there, but it's not what happened to me, but it's based on what happened to me in real life. I just fictionalized it for her, but it's very similar. That scene I was really nervous to put in there because we are living in a time where we're in this Black Lives Matter movement, and
Right.
I was scared. I was scared because I thought, I don't know if I have a place, to say something like this. And I realized, of course, that's my story. Of course I have a place. It's what happened to me. It is what it is. And of course, I don't feel the same way now that I did. And I gradually grew out of it, but it really took not I'm sad to say that it's been only in the last few years where I've really embraced it.
Which, if I'm hearing you correctly, racism goes both ways.
It does. Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And I experienced racism from Black people, white people. I was just very much in the middle. And it was really, I never really fit. I mean, I'm a weirdo anyway. Like, just my personality is different. I was born a 40-year-old woman, it, so just adding that to it, that was another reason I just wanted to downplay anything that made me another thing different, another
Did
thing.
did the act of writing actually help you to come to grips with your identity, your racial identity?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it did.
In
Yes.
what way?
I got to walk through it again with Penelope, and I just realized as I walked through that story with her, it became easier, and I thought, "She's more okay with this than I am, like, she's fine with it." And it was funny because
That sounds like it was a surprise to you,
it
realizing
was.
that's
It was a
that's the
surprise.
strange thing about writing, isn't it?
Yes. So she taught me a
Oh,
lesson. I was like, "Man, she's okay with it." And I'm not. But also, a lot of things happened in my life to get me to this place. The writing of the book kind of finished it off for me. But my sister passed away
mhm,
in 2018.
mhm.
Her urn is beside me, which I have to look at the date. But she passed away. And after her death, life just changed for me. And I realized not a lot matters when you lose somebody. And I know that you have lost somebody.
Right.
And do you agree that when you lose somebody,
It changes everything.
it changes everything?
I spoke at a conference in Colorado a couple of years ago on fear, and during the Q&A, somebody asked, what are you afraid of now?
Yeah.
And my initial reaction was, well, questions like that. And
Yeah.
but the real answer is not much anymore, because
Yes.
when you've experienced the worst, or what's, losing a son, that's pretty bad. I
That
mean,
is the worst.
I can think of other things that are pretty bad too, but when you go through that, that puts things in perspective. And
It does.
and so the other stuff, you don't sweat it as much anymore.
Exactly. And that is exactly my sentiments to a T. That helped me realize, you know what? It doesn't really matter. And it doesn't. It doesn't matter. And I am who I am. And I think that other people, when I say that, and when I watched my character be okay with it, and when I was able to say, yes, this is who I am, because when I look in the mirror, I don't really think about it, right? I just am myself. I don't think about that aspect of it. But that gives other people who are struggling permission
Yeah.
to be themselves. It was really great. I have stopped reading the reviews, the early reviews, because the novel isn't out yet. It comes out next week. But I stopped reading the reviews. For one, the negative reviews are rough to read for me because I want to argue. So I'm arguing in my head, like, no, you don't understand that,
Yeah.
So I stopped reading those.
Yeah.
But I ended up reading, somebody told me, oh, I hope you saw my review. And so I went back and looked through some of the reviews. And there was a biracial woman on Goodreads. And she said it was fantastic to read a character who looked like me and had the same experiences that I had. It's that living in the middle. You're in the middle between these two groups that not a lot of people can understand. I think that there are some people who, like, even gender identity and things like that. When you're in the middle, it's hard. When you don't really relate to one group or the other, or you do relate, but maybe not fully, or they don't accept you as, as that. So it doesn't matter whether you relate. But that was such a great feeling to me. I thought, yes, that right there, that is one of the things that is special.
When Barack Obama was elected, I mean, I remember the civil rights movement. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
when MLK was assassinated. Um, and I remember when Obama was elected, I remember thinking, we finally turned the corner on race.
Yeah.
Was I wrong?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So help me, help. I'm not sure how to phrase the question because this is live and I'm just making it up as I go. But we are living in a fraught time in this country,
Yeah.
and there's so many things on the table, and race, of course, is one of them.
Yeah.
And so, you're in the middle in some ways. What advice? I guess I'll ask it this way: what advice can you give to people who are trying to be sensitive about race, and in their sensitivity, they may still be making microaggressions, they may be making thoughtless comments? I mean, I grew up thinking, learn, having internalized that you want to deal with people as individuals, not
Yeah.
as part of a one group or another.
Yes.
And now I'm teaching writing at different writers literary centers, and they are overtly trying to be welcoming to people of color who have felt marginalized. And
Yeah.
so as a teacher, I have to almost be race conscious,
Yes.
which I'm uncomfortable being. So
Yes.
there's a lot tied up in what I'm asking. So help me take this apart.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard question, especially for me, because I still am in that space where, you it's hard when you don't think of yourself in a minority group.
Yeah.
You're just, it takes some time to wrap your mind around. But I think for me, I like the idea of taking people in as individual, because I think, yeah, you do belong to a group of people that are like you, and I think that's great. But people within these groups, ultimately, we are all people. And you have to be careful saying that. And I know I have to be careful saying that because not everybody has been treated that way. Right. And so I think when you are just aware and you make yourself known to be aware, when you're trying not to offend somebody who is of color or who is, just different, when you're just aware of that, when you're trying, then I think you're okay. People can see that. I see that if somebody's trying. But if you're coming up and touching my hair, don't do that. Nobody wants their hair
There's a
touched.
boundary issue there.
There's a boundary there. Like, respect that and think about, would you want to be treated this way? Because everybody has something about themselves. So I think a really great question is think about, would you want this part of you talked about in this way, so I think because it's not just about race, people have different things about them that they may want known or not want known or want somebody to be sensitive about or not sensitive about. And so I think just putting yourself in that space, that's, treating people like you'd want to be treated.
Now that you've taken the risk of being vulnerable on the page and
Yes.
plumbing all that psychology and getting it out there, how are you different now in day-to-day life when these issues come up?
I'm more vocal.
What do you mean?
I'm more vocal to say, yes, I am biracial, and yes, there are struggles that I have. I will say what struggles I've had, and I am not going to shy away from that. So that's what I mean by being more vocal, is talking about the experiences that I've had and just, contributing to the conversation in a way where I think other people appreciate that, where they get to experience something that they didn't know was even going on. I think, you can get, when you look at somebody who's white and their white experiences, and then you look at somebody who's black and their black experiences, and you're thinking about these two groups, you might not think about that person that's in the middle that's having this completely different experience. And so I think it's just that part, adding being where was I going with this? What
Well,
your original question was,
well,
how
I
has
mean,
that
and
changed?
how has it changed in terms of your daily life? But I'll say one thing is that this is not something I was going to bring up,
Yeah.
but you brought it up, and that
Yeah,
that gave me permission to talk about it.
exactly. I mean, you were sensitive to that. I love talking about it because I think
It's an important issue.
it is. I think it's important, and having other people feel like they can talk about it too. So I think, yes. So that's how I am more vocal. This is an example right here. I wouldn't have done this in the past. I would have shied away from that. I really wouldn't have maybe wanted you to ask me about it. I wouldn't have wanted to talk about it. And now it feels really nice to just talk about it. And some people aren't going to like it, and that's okay. I
Yeah,
don't
you
care.
can't please everybody, and
You
that's
can't please
and
everybody.
and that's true whether we're talking about race, whether we're just talking about writing.
Yeah, I
Not
was going to say the
not
same thing.
everybody in the world is gonna like your writing, Melissa.
I know. They should.
They
But no,
should.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yes, no, yes. And I think when you realize that, you feel so much better. Not everybody in the world has to like you. Not everybody in the world has to like your stuff. Because honestly, do you like everybody?
No,
Right. I don't either. I don't either.
let's turn the corner because you're a
Yes.
fascinating person.
Oh, thank you.
You are multifaceted, and being a medical provider is something in your
Yes.
past. Talk about that, because there's been a certain evolution there as well.
Absolutely. So I went to PA school. I'm physician associate. It used to be called physician assistant. And so, but that kind of the assistant part confuses people because not a lot of people seem to realize what a physician assistant is.
Well,
So
what is it?
it is a medical provider that is almost like a step under a doctor. So you get to see patients, you treat patients, guarantee you if you've gone to the ER or urgent care, you've been treated by a PA. or, nurse practitioner is the equivalent in the nursing model. PAs are trained under the medical model. So there's a little bit of a distinction there, but we're called mid-level providers. So I went to PA school, and I loved it, and I loved medicine. I loved taking care of people. And then my first job was in neurosurgery. And I went to the OR with the neurosurgeon. We operated, I rounded on patients, saw patients in the clinic, and it was a big task. I transitioned into orthopedic spine surgery. So in neurosurgery, it was a little bit of brain, mostly spine. And then when I transitioned to ortho spine, it was a little bit of joint, which I did not like, and then mostly spine. So then my surgeon was ready to retire, and he got to pick his cases, and he was like, we're just doing spine. So I was like, that works for me. So yeah, did spine surgery
Why
for,
why be a PA instead of a doctor? I'm sure being a doctor is
yes,
really hard and expensive.
it is. It is a 27-month program versus, 4 years plus that it takes to become a medical doctor. I didn't have to do residency, which was nice. When you get to start practicing medicine essentially like a doctor would, but you get to do it right away. Now you do have to have what's called a supervising physician, meaning that your physician, the medical doctor, has to sign off on, I think it's like 20% of your charts, a portion, a percentage. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but a certain portion of your charts, and then if you have a question, you're not the final say. So if something is really wrong and you're like, oh, I don't know, let me go ask my doctor. So it's that mid-level provider. It's a great word. So, but yes, you do. It's just, it was faster, and I wanted to make money sooner rather than later. And the loans were significantly less. So I was like, well, I
Sure.
can do essentially the same thing and have less liability and less cost and more free time. And I can transition into whatever specialty I want. So I started out in neurosurgery. Had I been trained in neurosurgery? No, I had not. I mean, we were generally trained in everything. I took pediatric rotation. So if I wanted to go tomorrow and apply for a pediatric position, I mean, they'd have to be willing to train me, but I could start working in pediatrics, which is nice. So there's flexibility there too.
So what is an integrative healthcare provider?
Yes. So quick transition on how I got interested in functional integrative health. Did spine surgery for forever. Stopped doing spine surgery when my first child was born. Stayed home. And at some point, I guess I was having daily hip pain. And then I got to a point where I just felt terrible. I have a autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it is a thyroid disorder where your body attacks your thyroid. And I got to a point in life where I was like, I feel terrible. I don't feel right. It feels like my thyroid, the symptoms I had of hypothyroidism. And so I went to my endocrinologist, and I was like, I don't feel right. He was like, but your lab tests look normal. And I said, but I don't feel right.
Mhm.
Again, we go back and forth. Your labs look normal. I don't feel right. And finally, I said to him, I was like, I didn't say this to him out loud. I thought to myself, I am a medical provider. He is not listening to me. I am going to go find out on my own.
Mhm.
And in PA school, I never learned anything about nutrition.
Hmm.
None medical doctors don't, or if it is, it's very small. You don't learn about preventative care. And if I were to argue about this, we don't practice healthcare, we practice sick care. I mean, that it should be that you're a sick care provider, not a healthcare provider,
Wow,
because
good term. Nicely said.
yeah, I mean, that's what our culture is right now. If you have a disease, you get a medicine. And so if you have heart disease, you're like, oh, here's this heart medicine. Or if you have high blood pressure, or you have high cholesterol, it's like, here, take this high cholesterol medicine. And do we fix the underlying problem? No. Why do you have high cholesterol? Why do you have high blood pressure? Why do you have a thyroid disease? Nobody asks these questions. And it finally hit me, why do I have this?
Huh.
And there was a reason. So I started researching on my own, and I realized and I found functional medicine. which is true healthcare to me. I mean, I am not bashing traditional medicine. It
Yeah.
is fantastic. I am a science-based girl. I think that we should take all of these fantastic treatments and use them, and high blood pressure medication is fantastic. I am not saying that it should be there's anything wrong with taking these medicines, but I'm just saying we need to also ask the question, why?
Are you seeing a change within medicine,
Yes.
traditional medicine? There's a more of a holistic approach and a receptivity to that?
Yes. Yes. I think that it's slow going, but I think we're getting there. I've seen a lot more people respond to it. And as I studied and I learned, what you eat and what you don't eat is so important. So you can turn these diseases on and off by just your lifestyle. And we just don't talk about it. But we're talking about it more. There are lots of providers out there that are functional and integrative, and people that are, have gone traditional, and they're asking why now.
When in your bio, you talk about being passionate about root cause healthcare. Uh,
Yes.
um, what does that mean?
That's that why. What is the underlying cause? What is that root cause of your disease? And we are all connected. We are a system. And we can't just treat the heart. We have to also treat what may have the endocrine disorder that caused you to have the heart disease in the first place. I think that we have to get to that root cause. What is that underlying thing that led you to the disease in the first place? Because it's all connected. And so that I really became passionate about that when I started just experimenting on myself, because I thought, I don't know about this. When I first approached the topic, I thought food is medicine. That seems bizarre. That what I eat and put in my body can't possibly affect how healthy I am. But the
Well, I don't know. I remember
amazingly,
eat your vegetables as, some,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that goes way
Just
back.
yeah, you're right. To some degree, we've always known this, right? It's not a novel thing. But even our ancestors, if you look back. Anyway, I will digress on that. But coming back to this, I saw it in myself. So I watched myself and I started changing my diet and doing some of the things that were recommended by the functional medicine providers. And my numbers of attackers, the thyroid attackers, dropped drastically and are near zero, which is why I say I have reversed my disease. I feel so much better. I lost 30 pounds. I wasn't overweight, but I lost 30 pounds just changing my diet alone. Because I'll be honest, I don't really like exercise, but it's a good thing. Exercise is great. But yeah, it just goes, it showed me and created that passion for what it did for me. And now I just want other people to see it.
Do you see yourself making this topic in your future fiction?
Yes. I actually,
Ooh.
in the novel that I'm working on now, there's little dribbles of it in a couple of novels, but I have thought about this and I really thought it would be so great to incorporate this. I haven't written a medical novel, probably because I had some PTSD just from working and being pregnant while working. And that's a whole nother story. I struggled at the end of my pregnancy and working in the operating room. So I've just kind of steered clear of medical stuff. But oh yes, I think I'm going to attack it in one of my fiction novels. I'm
Well,
excited about that.
and you've already established that writing is therapeutic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it so much.
Okay, okay. Um, so what's next? Do you have another book now, or are you finding that the pressure to write as well as you've done this time
Oh,
is so
thank you.
overwhelming that I can never duplicate
That
it?
they
I'll
just
never,
collapse.
yeah, a one-hit wonder.
One hit wonder. I think isn't every writer afraid of that? I
Yeah,
heard JT Ellison, who's
yeah,
prolific, say,
yeah.
she was worried every time that she can never be as good as
Hank
the last
Phillippe
novel she just
Hank
did.
Phillippe Ryan, I interviewed her, and
Yeah.
she's written, I think, something like, 13, bestsellers, and she said every time it's like, "Embrace the panic because
Yeah.
I don't think I can do it again."
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody feels that way. But This book, and I don't know that I ever fully answered that very first question that you asked me, but this book took a long time to get to publication.
This is true. Wait, let's circle back.
Yes. So I think it'd be interesting topic. So I told you this was my third book.
Right.
So after I got this book ready, I started pitching it to agents. And that took a long time. So when you pitch to agents, you're writing up, the synopsis of what your story is, and you're trying to convince them, hey, this would be a lovely novel for you to represent. You're
Right.
going to sell this thing and make money for us both. And, it's this convincing. So it took a long time to find somebody who it's just hard. It's hard to find an agent. So that took a long time.
But you didn't give up. Why didn't you give up?
I wanted it. I
But
wanted it.
self-publishing is so easy right now to do.
It is, but I did not want to do everything myself. I wanted
That's true.
yes, I know, because self-publishing is hard. You have
It's a
to
full-time job.
it's a full-time job, yeah. And I just wanted some help. And I was willing to give up some things like, them changing the title if they had to. They didn't, but they could have. I didn't pick my cover. Somebody else did. And so
Speaking of covers,
there it is. Yes. I love the cover. I think it's fantastic. I do love it.
did
But
you have any input?
I did. They were so fantastic. My publisher, Montlake, is amazing. I love them. They took care of me throughout the whole process, like the audiobook narrator, who is amazing, Alaska Jackson. Just shout out there. She is fantastic. She just understood my character so well.
Is the audiobook going to be coming out at the same time as the
Yes.
print copy? And it'll be on Kindle or ebook as well?
Yes. Kindle, audio, and a paperback.
Okay, excellent. Keep going.
So
the process.
yes. So it took so long to get this out there, to find an agent, and then for the agent to then pitch it to editors. And we were pitching women's fiction. And so, this whole straddling of genre, it is women's fiction, it is romance. And a lot of editors were like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, how do I market this when you're firmly in both lanes? And I'm like, hey, I'm a mixed gal here. I am equally both. So that's why I wrote, that I am a mix in my writing too, which I like. But since it took so long, I wrote the sequel to this book.
Nicely done.
Yes. I don't know. My light just shut off, but I don't know if they'll publish it. It's still out there for them. And this is kind of like a first date. So they'll see how well the false flat does. And if they like it, they'll ask me for another date.
No pressure, right?
No pressure. But then after that, because it took so long, I wrote another novel. And so then now I have two behind this one waiting, and I'm 30% of the way into the fourth one.
Are you finding that the writing comes more easily because there's a certain momentum now that you've built up?
No, I wouldn't say that.
That's not what we want to hear.
No, I know you don't. But the momentum for me is when I'm within the story and I'm going. On this book when I say this book that I'm writing now, it's not the false flat is coming out. I have written a sequel to that. I've written another book, and then I've written this other one. I'm writing this other one. So
is that an entirely different genre?
No, it's romance.
Okay.
It's truly romance. The next one is women's fiction, and the third one that I have written, which I don't know if any of those are going to get published. We're going to say yes. We're going to be positive.
Yeah.
But because I believe in putting that positivity out there.
You do that well.
Thank you. I think you have to believe in yourself. And I think I like to say this, I have a high self-esteem, but I have a high esteem for everybody else. Like we're all here.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt your story, but I want to call attention, because we're talking about positivity, to your newsletter. MelissaCollings.com/newsletter. It comes out every Monday. I read it. It's you have a lot of substance in there. You have a very engaging style. It's I think it's not a stretch that you talking about positivity causes me to go to your newsletter and say, oh, by the way,
Ah,
there's a
thank
newsletter there.
you.
So,
Thank you.
and you
Thank you for
talk
reading
about,
it.
oh, you're welcome. And you talk about the process and you're very vulnerable,
Mhm.
in your newsletter as well. So it's,
Yeah.
you've got that personal touch.
Thank you.
So we're talking about the process, the publishing process.
Yes. So you asked whether it was easier every time. I think that it's not really it wasn't easier. I just have to love the story that I'm writing, and then I have to be in it and go for it. So I was 30% of the way into this newest novel, and then I had to go back and do edits on something else, and then I had to do classroom duty as room mom, and then I started a job as a PA, and again, after being out of work, out of the medical side for years, and then it broke my flow, and so then it becomes hard. And so it's if I have a flow and I know where I'm going, it's easy and I love it, but it doesn't matter the book, it just matters the chunk of time I'm in, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And it really leads to another question. And that is, I mean, you're a wife, you're a mother of two, you're a medical provider, you're an author. How do you balance all that?
Sometimes it's not beautiful, John. Sometimes it is not a beautiful dance. I have balanced it by learning to say no.
Yeah.
I want to please people. I love helping people. I was very active in the youth ministry at church or church kids church because my kids are there,
Mhm.
and I had to let that go
Yeah. And you
because
feel guilty and you
I
feel
do.
guilty.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. I wanted to do it, but you can't do all the things. I saw this graphic online that beautifully described my feelings on this. It was a bunch of jars, and in the first picture, each jar had some liquid inside of it, and none of the jars were filled, but all of them had a little bit in it. And then the second picture was one jar was filled because all the water from each of the other small jars had been poured into the one. And I thought, that is it. You cannot be everything to everyone. You cannot do all the things no matter how much you want to. And I follow,
Because you're spread too thin and
yeah,
your influence is shallow because you're all over the place.
yes, yes. And that took me some time to learn that
Mhm.
I can't 100%. I'm a 100% person. So whatever I'm doing, I'm putting all of it in there.
Yeah.
And you can't put 100% into 7 things. It's physically the math does not work. Believe me, I have tried very hard
Right.
and it doesn't work. And you end up not only just draining yourself, you end up not doing things well, and you end up just, breaking down.
How many years did it take for you to discover this and
Oh,
realize?
I'm still learning it, but it took me all my life until just a little while ago, just maybe in the last year or 2.
Right.
Um, I've done some deep work, and I won't go into that
Right.
because that's a whole nother topic, but it's taken me some time in my life to realize that when you say yes to one thing, it means saying no to another.
Yeah.
And that was a hard pill for me to swallow because I wanted to say yes to all the things. And you simply cannot do that effectively.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, that,
I can remember when I was trying to get published for the first time, and Cindy took me aside and said, "Your book is your mistress."
that's
Ooh.
not a bad analogy. I
No,
mean,
it's not, and that got my attention. Probably not as fast as she would have liked, but that was 20 years ago, and I still remember the moment. So,
I
you
love
know,
it. How do
you
you juggle? How do you do it?
well, I'm retired now, so and the kids are
Okay.
grown, so
Yes, that makes a
there are a
difference.
lot of factors that make it a lot easier.
Yes.
So, but thank you for trying to turn the tables on me. I'm not going to let you do that. Um, do you have any advice for wannabe writers, especially you know uh, people who will be able to relate to you in so many different ways.
Yes.
There's so many irons in the fire that you do have.
Yeah.
What can you tell people that you've learned looking back?
Yes. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is persistence. It's a big topic for me, is being persistent. Because if you look at the statistics out there for how many novels are published traditionally, I mean, like you said, you can self-publish. You absolutely can. And so your odds of being published when you self-publish go up astronomically, right? But if you are wanting to, for whatever reason, if you desire this, if you have established your why of why you were doing this, and it could just be because I want to. And that was for me. I wanted to. And I saw it as a challenge. When I saw those numbers that said, oh, you can't do this, I was like, well, you just watch me.
I mean, the numbers are astronomical. It's like 80,000 books a day or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
And when you look at those numbers, you think, well, I'm never going to get out there. That's never going to be for me, because how am I going to stand out in all of that? It goes back to that believing in yourself, in your passion. I didn't have to be the best. I didn't have to be any of those things. I just had to be determined. I had to be determined, and I had to not quit. So my advice for a writer is, if you want this, anything in life, it doesn't even matter if it's writing. If you want something, you have to be willing to go after it. You have to do what it takes. And so for me, it was not stopping. Now, there's a caveat there, because there is a time where it's like beating your head against a rock, and it's like you need to stop because your brains are starting to come out. I mean, that's a horrible analogy, but I'm medicine, so we're going there.
Brain surgery. So there.
Right. Yes. So there. So there comes a time where you have to realize, okay, I need to stop. But I had, and you will, in anything that you do, have little seeds of encouragement that think, okay, well, this is still my right path. And you do this inner analysis. Do I still want this? Am I still, on the right track for this? Do I still have what it takes to do this? And you have what it takes. Do I have the time for this? The, desire, all those things. And if that's inner check is still yes, then just keep going. Keep working on your craft. Keep applying to, anything, applying to getting your queries out there, applying to getting works published that are smaller. You just have to keep taking those steps forward, because here's the thing. Most people don't. Most people stop. And that is the only reason why I got an agent when it's really hard to get an agent, why I got published when it's really hard to get published. I just kept going. Now, were there times along the way that I wanted to stop and had doubts? Absolutely, 100%. This business is a roller coaster ride.
How many rejections did you get?
Hundreds.
Really?
Yes, hundreds. Now, that's not on this novel. That is through my novels, because I pitched 1 and 2, because they're psychological thrillers. Like, that's a whole suspense. Right. I love, that was what I wrote. This book was a different story for me. I didn't read romance. I read psychological suspense.
Interesting.
Yes. So, but back to your original question, which was what did you ask me?
How many rejections?
Yes. I received a lot of rejections over a lot of different books.
And that's psychologically cumulative.
Absolutely.
It can be daunting and discouraging. And the point is, you don't give up.
You don't give up, because you don't know why somebody on the other end is saying no.
Yeah,
sometimes they tell
do.
you.
They rarely do.
They rarely do. But it could be because they just got somebody like you and they have to say no. Perhaps they love your writing, but they've taken on too many clients and they can't take any more in your genre. There are so many reasons for somebody to say no. And you have to remember that the people on the other end are people too. They're not special police that are telling you yes you can or no you can't. Right. It still hurts. I'm not going to lie. Rejection still hurts. And every time I would get one, I would get bummed and I would let myself feel the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just be real with yourself. This is hard. Wouldn't you say? This is a beautiful torture.
Oh my. So, how let's see, people can get in touch with you through your website,
Yes.
melissacollings.com.
Yes.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to get into?
Oh goodness, I don't know. I'm we could talk about so many we could talk about so many different things. No, I don't think so. We've talked about everything.
We've talked about a lot of stuff.
We've gone all over the place.
You're a fascinating person. I knew this was
Thank you.
gonna be fun. We've been, one-to-one with Melissa Collings. She is the author of False Flat, which is coming out in, June of, there it is full oh, you're gonna hold it up.
Oh, no, yeah, you can put it up there.
Well, we've done I wanna see you holding it. I think that
Yes.
excellent. It's this interview lives in infamy on the interwebs, but we're doing it about a week before it actually gets published in June of 2024. But you're a delight,
Thank
and
you. You are a
I'm
delight.
well, thank you. But as I say, this isn't about me. This is about
I
you.
know, but the connection, we wouldn't be here without that original connection, and I remember meeting you and thinking that you were fabulous, and every single time we talked, we had a blast,
We met at
and
Killer Nashville
we did.
couple of years ago, and it was at the table with, let's see, it was Bruce Coffin, James Latoile,
Yes.
Emily Whitson, Meredith Lyons, and
Yes.
you. I think that was
Yes.
our lunch table.
It was our lunch table, and boy, was that a good lunch table.
That was a
And
lot of fun.
yes, and it was a treat because me and Emily and Meredith were all newbies at the time, and so to be around you guys that were seasoned and so knowledgeable was just a treat, and then you were just the gift that keeps on giving.
And on that note, this has been fun. Thanks so
This
much,
is so
Melissa.
fun. Thank you,
You
John.
bet.